Hello, everyone, and welcome to our weekly discussion series that's hosted by the Chaldean Cultural Center in collaboration with U of M Detroit Center, Unique Voices in Films, and CMN TV. I'm your host, Wiam Nemu, and today we have this wonderful team from the Chaldean News celebrating their 20-year anniversary. It's been I didn't realize that Chaldean News was around for that long. I've been with them for since I believe 2006, 2007, but it turns out that there's somebody here that's been with them a little bit longer than that, and that's Alex Lomelsky. And Alex, hello. Thanks for joining me, by the way, everybody. Alex, Cal, Dr. Miri. So, Alex, why don't you tell us a little bit about the history of the Chaldean News, how it was established and why it was established, and how did you get involved?
Alex, you're muted.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Sorry
Yes.
about that. Okay. So the Chaldean News was first organized in 2003, with the first issue coming out in February 2004. Back then, the Chaldean community looked a little different than it does today. It was sort of at the beginning stages of what you might call, quote unquote, arriving. The community had been around for several decades, but there were no strong organizations that could pull the community together, that you could unite this community in one place. And one of the things that took place in 2003 was the start of the Chaldean American Chamber of Commerce, which did that for the business community. But also parallel to that, some people got together and decided to launch a publication. These people were Martin Manna, Vanessa Denha, Tony, sorry, I'm missing his last name, but you can get that later. Mike Sarafa was involved. And what they did is they decided to model it on another ethnic newspaper. And the ethnic newspaper they had in mind was the Detroit Jewish News, which had been published in Detroit since 1943. And as it happens, I had been employed there just before they connected with the Jewish News. Initially, they were hoping that that publication can help them to launch the Chaldean News. I remember they came through for a tour of their facilities, and I wasn't there at the time, but what happened was um, one of my coworkers, who was then my girlfriend and became my wife, Zena, put me in touch with Martin because she met them while they were visiting the Detroit Jewish News. And anyway, so that's kind of how it started. They were looking for an established organization to publish their newspaper. That deal fell through, and instead they met me, and I was able to help them achieve this goal without the overhead that that the Jewish News had to build into their costs. So that was in the fall of 2003. And I remember Vanessa coming over to my house, which was in Hamtramck at the time, with some preliminary samples of a publication that they had produced prior. And I remember talking about the different departments that they wanted to do, the different kinds of features they wanted to cover. And basically, we spent that fall, autumn, holiday season designing the publication. And the initial plan was to launch in January, of course, because that would make sense. But it just did not pan out that way because there was more work to be done. And so our initial publication came out in February, a month later. That's the story.
So you basically got adopted into our community through the Chaldean News. Hence
Yeah.
your
So
wife.
yeah. So Zena is Chaldean. We were dating at the time, and She was looking to leave the Jewish News, and she interviewed with Martin for a full-time position with the Chaldean News, with this yet to be established company. But her needs were different at the time in that she was looking for full-time benefits, health coverage, 401k, etc. The Chaldean News wasn't really an established organization. It was a startup that existed only in the minds of the founders. So they were not in a position to take on a full-time staffer. And my story was actually that I was leaving full-time work, in an office, and I was interested in building up my clients for my new design studio. So I wasn't looking for a job, I was looking for a client, and this turned out to be a perfect fit. And I remember Zena telling me that at the end of that interview, she said, "You should call my boyfriend, Alex." And, Martin reached out to me, and here we are.
Well, good thing that she did that. Obviously, they're happy with you and you're happy with them. The fact that you lasted this long.
People say this all the time, we're family, etc. You hear, everyone says it in their annual organization meeting and whatever. But over the years, it really has come to feel like family for me. And by that, I mean, that involves everything that you would expect to happen in a family, including arguments and bickering and throwing staplers at each other in meetings and all that. No, not the staplers part.
But that's all the
no,
fun stuff, though.
Yeah, that's the fun stuff. No, but I mean, we're passionate about what we do. There are disagreements, and it's a process. But one thing I could say is that for me personally, it's important that whoever I work with, I am able to express what I actually think, not what I'm supposed to say because it's what they want to hear.
Wow.
And in this organization, I've always felt that I had that freedom, that it's always understood that whatever I say, and whatever my opinion, it's for the purpose of the same purpose that we all share, which is getting to the best story, the best result. It's not just to be difficult. That happens after the meeting. So,
I really appreciate that feedback of your observation, because as a non-Chaldean, there was somebody else that I spoke to recently that works for the Chaldean Foundation, and she's been around there for just a couple of years. She came from another state, and she was sharing with me that when she was looking for a job, one of the reasons that she was attracted to working with the Chaldean Foundation is that when she met with the team, she said they just seemed so fun, and there was something, she didn't know anything about Chaldeans. She was from a different state, and she was willing to come and relocate, and it was based on the feeling that she got from connecting with them. So I'm kind of hearing the same thing from you, and it's true. It is, the atmosphere is like that. Sometimes we take it for granted as Chaldeans. We think like, well, this is how we are. But I think some other people that come in kind of recognize that they have that freedom to be themselves and to be honest with communicating. So, well, thank you so much for sharing all of that, Alex. And I think, who would you say is the next person in line that has been longest with the Chaldean News? I don't know if it's between Dr. Miri and Sarah.
It is Sarah. It is Sarah.
Sarah.
Ladies,
Okay.
yeah, ladies
Sarah,
first.
Okay, you're next. So let us know how you got involved with the Chaldean News, and I got it because you're not Chaldean, but you have.
I'm not Chaldean. That's true.
Yeah.
I'm an honorary Chaldean.
You're an honorary Chaldean, and you have a big job to do. So we really appreciate what you do at the Chaldean News, and I know that you're probably involved in other things associated with a Chaldean organization. So tell us how you got involved and what your experience has been.
Okay, so actually I hired in with the Chaldean Chamber in 2018, and I was doing events for the chamber, and started doing some freelance writing because writing is my passion and communications is my degree. So I started doing some freelance writing for the Chaldean News. And what I like to say is I got a field promotion in 2020 when COVID hit. Actually, the print day, we changed the cover story, changed the cover. Alex, you probably remember this. We were all working from home. as well. So it was very, it was a very quick shift, but I love it. I love the atmosphere here. As Alex said, we're all family. Martin likes to say we spend more time with each other than we actually do with our families. Working an 8-hour day. So yeah, I've been the editor since 2020. Really enjoy this year. I'm really enjoying going back through all the archives and reading all the stories, because that's part of what I'm doing, is pulling out the cover stories each month. So it's been a real deep dive, a great education, and yeah, I look forward to celebrating our anniversary for the rest of the year.
So Sarah, I'm curious, are you originally from Michigan, or are you from?
Born and raised in Detroit. I came to the chamber from PBS. So I was at PBS for almost 10 years doing events for them. And they were looking for an event coordinator at the chamber. I knew Frank Jonah. He was on the board at PBS. So he kind of was my in here to the chamber. So how I ended up here. When I initially interviewed, I was asked if I knew anything about Chaldeans, and I said I knew that that Chaldeans came from Iraq. I knew that you spoke Aramaic, and knew that you were Catholic. That was about it. But apparently that was more than most people outside the community knew. I also have 8 siblings and was raised Roman Catholic. So when Martin found that out, he said, "You're
That's,
pretty much
yeah.
Chaldean." Yeah,
It's easier to understand us with that, right?
for
So,
sure.
what are some of the things that you learned outside what? Well, you did know a lot in comparison to other people, although especially in Michigan, more and more people are learning about us. But outside of the just normal that we're Christian, that we're Catholic, that we have large family members, we throw these huge wild parties and a
Great
beautiful
parties.
cultural great parties. Yeah. So outside of those basics, what are some of the things that you have found that really stood out and just maybe surprised you even?
Well, wasn't aware of how entrepreneurial the community is. I mean, finding out things like most, the majority own their own business, and that almost half of them own more than one business. One of the things that, just being part of the chamber and knowing the businesses that are part of the chamber, the side hustle that it seems like everybody's got something going on the side, which is inspiring, actually. I may write a book or something, just to be part of that entrepreneurial group. But that I didn't realize the differences in the church services too. I thought that they were more similar. So, the service is different. The baptisms are different, because, I was baptized as a baby. I didn't know what was going on. Things like that, confirmation, just the timing a little bit different. And then the whole history of the church, things like being converted by St. Thomas the Apostle. That's crazy to me. But that's how far back this faith goes in the community. Things like that. I just think it's a really impressive. I love how close the community is and how it's stayed close, even though you've got all of the pressures from the outside world to conform and to, become just like everybody else. But that's not happened in this community. So really happy to be a part of it.
Nice observation. So that side hustle part, I used to think like I was kind of an oddball when it came to some of the things I did. So it was more like what I did might have been not as common, but having a side hustle is something that all the Chaldeans normally. I actually had to find that out myself, and it was liberating because I thought, oh, I'm not that abnormal as I thought. But also the observation that the Chaldeans did hold on to certain traditions that they found were in the long run very healthy for the community, that despite outside pressures and being stereotyped in certain ways, that I think our elders somehow deep down knew that this really is a strong foundation if we continue on certain beliefs. And I really think like this is the year you're celebrating 20 years, but I've noticed that in these celebrations, because the Chaldean Cultural Center celebrated its 20-year anniversary last year, and in observing and seeing what the community has accomplished throughout the time, you realize like, well, there were some traditions, some values that we held on that has really helped us along the way, and that even though inwardly we might have criticized them or questioned them, at the end of the day, it has served the community. And so we are grateful for whoever is kind of like, for our elders, really, our elders helped us do that, and their wisdom. I think they played a very strong role in that. And so, yeah, so these are all wonderful observations. Thank you, Sarah. And we'll talk later about some of the more difficult challenges, especially with trying to tell our story, and maybe that and you can share those. I know, like, even as a writer myself, there are some stories that are hard to address, and how do we navigate that through the community, or how are you guys trying to navigate that? And then we go now to Dr. Miri and Cal, and I don't know which one of you guys comes next as being the oldest with the Chaldean. I know the oldest person that's been with serving the Chaldean community is Dr. Miri, because he's got so many degrees and he's been involved in I've seen him speak at so many events even before I met him, and I was very, very impressed by his knowledge and him going back and forth to Iraq so many times. But so who wants to share their involvement with the Chaldean news next?
Since I'm the oldest member and also perhaps the boldest, I think I should go first. But yeah, if Cal permits me. We am, one of the letters that is repeated more than any other letter is the letter C. So the Chaldean news starts with C. I am Chaldean, of course. I'm Catholic. I'm Christian. I also happen to be a chemist, and all of these starts with the letter C. So the letter C has an impact on us. But, going back to the Chaldean news, my involvement, I was asked in 2018 by Martin to join the foundation. We were going through a transition. The foundation was growing, its base was expanding. And we were communicating to the community, especially on the east side of the town, in Sterling Heights, Warren, and the other suburbs. And we lacked a voice and a word, if I may say, and a publication. So we had a publication, which was just a few pages. It's an Arabic publication for the Chaldean Foundation. And they needed some language support. They needed some material support. So I came to join the foundation. And also we had some ongoing projects in Iraq. And because I have a base there and I communicate and I travel frequently, so that was the role I was supposed to play. But gradually, as things evolved, I was pulled to the Chaldean news to also write. I'm not a writer, I'm a scientist, but I love writing and I love sharing my knowledge when possible.
And you write great stories, by the way. They're so informative. And as I have told you before, in my book, Little Baghdad, I relied a lot on some of the articles I referenced that you had written. So we do appreciate your writing.
Yeah, thank you. So that was the magnet. That's why I joined the Chaldean News. And as you know, we as an evolving community, we have multiple media sources to communicate with the community and also with our surrounding. And so we had a voice, but really we didn't have words. We didn't have a print. And I think the Chaldean News played that role and played it really in a beautiful way. It became really a significant factor in communicating, in educating, in illuminating, and also in covering relevant information and material to keep the community connected, both to home and abroad. And And of course, it evolved. It became perhaps the largest and most comprehensive, I would say, publication in the United States, a continuous publication. We've had waves of different publications by different entrepreneurs, but at this structure, at this shape, this was really a very unique experience. The other thing is, the scope and size of the topics that we include are quite interesting. We also are digital now. We operate a website, which Cal and others supervise so beautifully. We also have evolved not only in what I call first class design, thanks to Alex, and editorial material, and thanks to Sarah for that. We have local columnists, we have cultural features. We always try to engage and involve young writers. Our mission is quite important, and really, I can only summarize it in one word. We try to be relevant and cover the community. We'd like to strengthen its present. We like to shape the future through articles, through education, through illumination.
And with that, I think part of our important future is Cal. We're all very excited that someone like you, Cal, has taken such an interest in the culture and in our community. And how did you get involved with the Chaldean News? And what has your role been in it?
Thank you, Wayam. First of all, I really appreciate you taking the time and effort to put us on here and give the Chaldean News a spotlight. I'm only a few years older than the Chaldean News itself, and I graduated from college about 3 years ago. I studied a lot of journalism and worked in a lot of journalism at the student newspaper. I had an internship with the Detroit News a few years ago. I, experimented with different blogs and newsletters and working with different friends, kind of see what you like, right? And through those experiences, I finished college and I realized that the sort of classic writing structure of doing basic reports and writing about news all the time didn't really interest me as much, or I should say it didn't really inspire me, right? So I was looking for something like a magazine, really is what it is. With a magazine, you have so much more freedom. You have real topics that you're focusing on. You have way more dedicated readers. And you're not publishing just clickbait, right? You're really trying to build a community and build a brand. And the problem with that is they're not often hiring. So thankfully, the Chaldean News was looking for somebody to really bear down on the community and report really good stories, which is what I kind of fell into really enjoying during my college experiences, writing stories about people and about interesting things, not necessarily reporting the news. And the Chaldean News was really perfect for that. So when I joined here 2.5 years ago now, time flies when you're having fun, right? I started, investigating those stories, and it's a really cool experience to get to know my community in such an intimate way. I was born and raised here in Metro Detroit, and I didn't realize how far-reaching the Chaldean community and their influence goes, and how deeply this culture really impacts us, and how we act on a daily basis, and how we treat other people, how we treat the community around us. And this paper really felt like it had a purpose besides just reporting the news. The magazine, like, it's to teach people about what Chaldeans are. It's to teach our own community about the news that's going on, about our exciting people. It's to inspire younger people to become things that they might not expect a Chaldean is able to. And so all of those parts play into what we're doing and the content we publish and the content we make, because now we've expanded way past a printed issue to include a website, podcasts, videos, and social media. And that kind of purpose is really cool to um, just kind of bask in and enjoy, and debating those different things like, are we here to uh, publish content that Chaldeans want to read, or are we here to teach them about things, or are we here to challenge their views and challenge how they act? All of these questions are really important, and I think we're addressing all of them in different ways too.
Well, that's a perfect way to bring us into the next topic, but I just want to make a comment about what you just shared, Cal. One thing I noticed about you is when we did the Beit Nahrain conference, and Dr. Miri was one of the speakers for the Writers of Mesopotamia, which was hosted at the Chaldean Foundation. And so we interviewed the writers, and you were a part of that because you were, I was interviewing the writers, and then you ended up interviewing me, but you had the podcast all set up and everything, the equipment. I really appreciated how much attention you were giving to the interviews. You cared about the topics. I felt like you were learning from them. Afterwards, we had discussions, and I really appreciated that. I think that you so belong in this because of all the reasons that you said, but I witnessed it, how interested you are in what all these really wise writers were sharing. I mean, Dr. Miri was there, Habib Hannona, other writers that you just, really just were soaking up the information that they were sharing and enjoying it. And so that does bring us to this topic, and you guys are free, whoever wants to answer some of these questions, is that how do you make these decisions? I know that the community, I've reached out to you guys a couple of times because I've been contributing to the Chaldean News, since, like I said, I don't remember if it was 2006, 2007, but it's been a long time that I contribute. And I love when there are stories, especially that are new to me. I tend to sometimes get too stuck behind my computer. And for a while, especially when my kids were younger and I covering a story for the Chaldean News, that was like my going out, like that was my adventure for the month or something. And it got me to learn what's going on in the community, stay up to date, get to kind of know people that I didn't even realize had come here, their struggles, some of their accomplishments. It was really fun for me to, even if it was that one article a month, it was just really exciting to kind of be part of the community in that way. And I did feel like it was kind of a service as well. I had so many compliments from people saying, you really captured the essence of what I was telling you. You really captured the heart of the story. And so I just loved that kind of feedback. And then once in a while, I'll get these calls saying, you got to tell the Chaldean News, we want them to publish this and we don't want to publish it. And I said, well, I'm a contributor, but because, the Chaldean News has become family to me as well. And so I feel close enough to you guys just to say, hey, by the way, some people are wondering about this and are interested about why certain stories get covered and not. And I know a lot of people have no idea. This goes for any paper. I mean, the Chaldean News is not an exception. I'm sure that every single paper has to deal with that. But with the specific community as Chaldeans, how do you navigate through that? How challenging is it? And how do you make those kind of decisions? And where are you trying, what do you envision this going? Like the things that you might want to include that you currently there's maybe challenging to include? I don't know. I mean, I'm just kind of speaking from my own thoughts based on some people, what they've reached out to me and said, but you guys kind of tell me, what your challenges are. And I'm going to unmute everybody so you can.
I'll take that, and then you guys could correct me where I missed the boat. But So one of the things that one of the challenges we have is that in an ideal world, I'd love to have 12 reporters on the ground in the Metro Detroit area, sniffing out great stories every day. We don't have that, but we're working toward it, one reporter at a time. But one of the reasons, just to answer your question, or the people who call you to answer their question, one of the reasons we may not cover a story is we may not be aware of it. So, a really good way to get a story covered would be to contact the editor. There's a contact form on the website, and to submit the idea. So we always welcome that, and we will look at any ideas that come in and consider them. I also want to go back to the point that Cal made about that friction between deciding what to publish. Do we want to publish what people want to hear? Do we want to teach them? Those challenges. I think the answer is all of the above, because it's got to be a mix. You can't bang people over the head with a thick book; they'll run away. But on the other hand, you can't keep giving them clickbait, because that doesn't serve anybody, and it's ethereal, it's here and gone. So I think that the role of the Chaldean News is to find, or our challenge rather, is to find that delicate balance between keeping an audience engaged in such a way that there are, let's just say, fun things in there for them to see, like people they may know, or perhaps themselves, because they are part of the community. So we need to reflect the community, but then also, I think, to inform them about some things that they may not be aware of. This is where Dr. Mary's pieces come in, because there are literally thousands of years of history that can be drawn upon, and in everyday life, people often don't have time to to read their history books after work. But in the Chaldean News, I would say this is probably one of the only sources Chaldeans can find actual history in small bits every month about their heritage. There aren't too many books published on this topic. There are some, but there aren't a great number. But in the Chaldean News, every month you can find something about the heritage of this community, not only in Detroit and Michigan, but going back. So it's a delicate balance. One other thing I'll add that I think is important to keep in mind is, as the publication evolves, I noticed this actually probably right around 10 years ago. It occurred to me for the first time that what we're building here is a history of this community. We're documenting, because every month, we're just working on the next issue, and we're just worried about, the specifics of that month. So we don't always take a breath and look back at the big picture. But this anniversary year for us internally has really been an eye opener. And as I said, I started to think about this maybe 10 years ago, that the thought first occurred to me that, wow, we've done it for 10 years, and we're establishing a record of this community. It just didn't occur to me before. Maybe it occurred to others, but we certainly didn't promote it that way. But now, 20 years in, I think we're feeling safe about claiming to be the quote unquote paper of record for the Chaldean community. And we do have that responsibility of building that record, so that 20 years into the future, people not yet born can go to the archive section and look and see what their grandfather was doing in 2012. This is an important
This
service,
is
I think, to the community.
definitely, yes, it is a service, and it's definitely something that is historical, to be documenting things that, like we have shared in the past that, our stories were not really told, where we came from our birth country, from our ancestral land, maybe in historical books, but not the actual living Chaldeans. And at some point, we all know that there were articles being published about us being basically non-existent. And, that was, I think, 10 years ago, when a major magazine was just, that we were extinct. And we're like, no, we're not. But it's our job, you realize sometimes amidst the frustration, is that it is our job to share the stories, to publish the stories, to tell the stories. Whatever role we play, even if it's not the storytelling, there's other ways to participate. So would you say, if somebody else, I don't know, like if Sarah, you want to speak on that, regarding people reaching out, they'll reach out to me, and I've said, you can really just reach out. Is it easier than people think, reaching out to the Chaldean News? Maybe they think it's more complicated. Maybe they think they're if they reach out through the site, that they're not gonna be heard. I
We
wonder.
just like you a lot, Liam.
They just want to give me more things to do, like it does, or they think I have. Yeah, this influence, like I'm gonna make sure that story. But I think there is a system there that they are maybe not as connected with, but there are opportunities to share the stories. I know that Sarah mentioned to me, once I introduced you to somebody, actually he's probably listening right now, Thomas, that has gone to Iraq, has amazing stories to share. And then I saw you asking him if he also writes.
Yes.
Sarah, you're trying to grab all these writers. So you're actually, I think it's more, that availability is more there than people think, but it's maybe knowing how to reach out.
Right. It's as easy as an email to edit@chaldeannews.com. And we do get submissions quite often. And also from people of the community. Like if you get a lead, you'll send it to us. I want to go back to answer your earlier question, which is how do we decide what to print? We do have an editorial board that meets every month. So we get input from them. There are people who actually monitor social media and tell us what people are talking about in the community. So, and then our publisher, of course, has a big say in what we publish. But, we're learning now that we have a broader audience than we thought, that we've got people in Iraq who are reading the paper. We know that people in San Diego, that community is reading this paper too. And actually, Cal's getting ready to write a story about that community and maybe educate the community here about the community in California, because it's a smaller community, but they're using this community here as a model of how to build out their community. So I think that I think it's important that we're not insular, that we do look at what's going on in the rest of the world. We have a section called Iraq Today, where we talk about what's going on in Iraq. We have a section, Chaldean Digest, and it's all about what other publications are saying about Chaldeans. So I think it is important, like I said, to look outside the community too for content, but we also love to celebrate the community's successes. So, when good things happen, when there are appointments made, maybe political appointments, things, we love to celebrate those things. So, yeah, edit at Chaldean News is probably the best way to.
And I think people also might take for granted the fact how much, just like everybody else, that people don't know. Like you didn't know, when I even have to pitch the stories. They don't just automatically, like, I don't just go and write a story and then so I myself, having been there for so long, I still say, hey, I'm thinking I have this idea or that idea. Does it work? But I know that the producer, the Chaldean producer that was in California, you guys didn't know about him. And then we did a profile about him. And then I sent him stacks and stacks of the Chaldean News, which he passed around, and they really enjoyed reading it. So I think it's a matter, we are a tight community, but we're not small enough that everybody knows everybody's business all the time. There's still so much information. And again, people with the producer, Sam Sacco, I remember when I sent him, he really appreciated that we sent the stack of Chaldean News and passed him around. He's been here for over 50 years, and he wasn't really as familiar. So again, it's people trying, maybe asking themselves, like, how can they participate? How can they help get the word around? How can they contribute to the paper, whether with ideas or if they are able to write well. I mean, it can't be, not just anybody can write a story. So yeah, just for them to reach out. And I don't know if Dr. Mary or Cal, you guys have anything to add to that?
Um,
Sorry, Cal. You want to go first?
no, you deserve it.
Thank you. Well, just to kind of frame what was being said by both Alex and Sarah, we are primarily a cultural community. And because of that, I think we need to support, and like Sarah said, celebrate our heritage. And I think that's reflected very much in the Chaldean news, one story at a time. And like was said by Alex, we are really building an archive for the future. Many of our young readers get surprised by the topics we present, or even the pictures. The pictures tell great stories, and I think our design has changed to include lots of pictures that connects to different times, to different people. And so we are actually building an archive for the future, a reference, and our mission remains. We want to promote the community, want to share the stories, and we want to ensure continuity and content. There, as I said earlier during my presentation, we've had many publications appear here in the community, but they fade after a period of time. And the main reason was because there was no team. It was anchored on a single person, single editor, and it didn't work, whether for financial reasons or material. So our mission has to continue, and it has to have continuity. And here, I think the challenge that we are facing altogether is how to incorporate and include new writers, especially the young writers. We invite people at all time. We have an open door and open window for people to contribute and write. And in fact, to expand that base of writing, we started introducing some Arabic material, a couple of pages in every issue, because our senior readers want to read some in Arabic. But we hope that will also open the door for somebody to write in Arabic, not be shy about writing and documenting family history, village history, their presence and experiences in the United States. But now we can translate that. We can make it happen. So we encourage all new writers to really be involved. And you'll be surprised what brilliant writers we have. We had a small competition some time ago, and some of the young ladies, girls, age 15 and some less, presented beautiful articles. So we know they are there. The question is, how do we connect them to the Chaldean news? I think that's our challenge.
I think we're going to switch to Cal with that question. So Cal, how do we get the young people more involved in sharing their stories? Because they're talented. They do have stories to tell out there. And, they don't even have to be like, nobody that's really writing is necessarily like a full-time writer, but contributing as a way, including Dr. Mary. We've talked, Dr. Mary, about this topic about you having all these different professions. How do you make the time just to contribute to these articles? So most writers, whether Chaldeans or not, they're not just being full-time writers. Oftentimes they're just contributing. So Cal, how do we help do that? What is your opinion on it?
It's a really good question and problem. And the first thing I want to say is Dr. Miri put it beautifully. And what we're looking for is continuity, and for this Chaldean news to continue operating and doing what it's done, and even improve. Right, in a lot of ways, we're going into the multimedia space. We're developing film and radio and audio, and all kinds of different stuff. And um, with regards to new writers and especially young writers, one of the things we did last year was we had a young writers essay contest where we got close to 40 submissions from people, Chaldeans aged like 14 to all the way up to 25. And this really changed my perspective because, there were some mediocre writers for sure, but a lot of the writers were really good and were really clear thinkers and had a good story to tell also about the topics that we asked. And it opened my eyes to the possibilities of like, we actually do have a community of smart and talented people who are skilled at writing and thinking. And we've engaged with a lot of them since that contest finished last year, and I'm certainly looking forward to like what they can contribute and what ideas they have. The challenge is always like getting them to write in the proper format and kind of teaching people what uh, the right style is, what a magazine style is versus a newspaper. So few people today even learn what newspaper writing is. It's tough, and you really have to go to school for it. Spend a lot of time in the classroom studying it or working on it. And I think part of our job here is to uh, not only teach people those skills, but also expand what we have to offer to accommodate all types of different styles, right? If that's video or social media series that can educate people. And another thing I wanted to add, especially with regards to the younger Chaldean crowd, is the in the past the way you would get information across between a magazine and readers, um, especially a monthly magazine, it was really slow. This sort of feedback loop of information would happen after an issue. People would find it, and then they would get in contact with the magazine about something that's being published. But we have like way better mechanisms and mediums that we can talk to our community and engage with our audience. Like social media is such a great way to engage with the Chaldean news, commenting about it, sending it to people, talking to people about the stories we publish is like that's engaging with the news and with what we're offering and with the community in the end. And so even small steps like that, getting in touch with one of us and developing a relationship, learning more about it, all of those are really valuable and ways that we can get involved and engage young people too.
So, what I really like about this is that people are having a chance to see the faces behind the desks that they reach out to. And, from seeing you guys, and you guys are like that in real life, but you're decent people. You're not gonna like, bark at anybody that reaches out and has comments. And I've had so many conversations with you, and I know that you have the community's interest at heart, that if people reach out, you have taken so many comments into consideration where really they could just be figured. You can't sometimes time wise or energy wise, we can only focus on so many things or take so many things into consideration. But I've seen you respectfully taken so many of the comments to really study and try to see where the other person is coming from and to put those into consideration, and that takes up a lot of work, but I've seen you do that. And I just want to end this with saying that again, congratulations for 20 years. Major accomplishment to be steady going on in 20 years, covering, documenting our history as well as our current state, and giving so much vision for our youth, so much hope and inspiration for our youth, especially when you share some of the stories of the accomplishments that the Chaldeans are making. You are going to be moving soon. We're going to be neighbors in a particular building that's not kind of far away from where we're at, but that's part of the growth, and that's really wonderful. Any last words for what you hope to see and what what you envision for the future? And you guys can just take it basically how we started. We can start with Alex and go to Sarah, Dr. Mary, and Cal.
Sure. So, yeah, I just listening to what Cal and Dr. Miri and Sarah were saying and what you were saying, Liam, I would say that social media is a really good tool, with all the problems that social media does have. It's a good tool for people to be directly in conversation with the publishers of with the publication. So we do listen to the comments that come back. We're very interested in hearing feedback, and you could rest assured that that does go into the calculus as far as what we should be covering or what we should not be. I would also say that just to jump back real quick to the how to contact us, there's also a little black button on the website called Contact. It's really simple. You press that button and there's a little form. That's another really easy way to get to the editor, maybe even easier than emailing. And while I'm on that subject, I just want to mention a little plug that the entire collection of 20 plus years of archives is on the website. So you can, within the next 5 seconds after this interview, you can click on that and view and read any issue from any year that you might be interested in. Just wanted to get that in there. And, as far as what I'd like to see happen going forward, it is good to celebrate the achievements of the community. We are building a record of what happened. So if there are important milestones, those should appear in publications so that people can see them years down, years down the line. I would also like to see the Chaldean News play a role in helping this community to evolve. So, for instance, there are some topics and questions that are difficult to discuss because they're hush-hush. People don't want to discuss them. I would challenge ourselves to push to get more of those topics out in the open, because that's how you move beyond certain issues that you may want to move beyond. Just to give you one example, and I'm not part of this community. I mean, by heritage, I'm not Chaldean, but I could tell you this sort of thing exists in pretty much every, ethnic group where, there's superstitions and you don't want to talk about certain things. One example is, people don't like to talk about medical history. If somebody was really sick or if somebody had mental illness, or one anecdote is a certain person I know had a grandmother who had breast cancer. And this grandmother would never mentioned it to the family ever. Well, her granddaughter developed breast cancer, and it would have been actually helpful for her to know that there was a history of it in the family. But the way that the traditions and the culture is, it was frowned upon to discuss such things. And so that's just one example of how, you can keep certain traditions, but maybe evolve to be more practical in other ways, So I'd like to see the publication challenge us in those ways to bring to light some questions that may be difficult to wrestle with. Oh, there's a writer climbing into my window right now, by the way. So Anyway, that's pretty much what
Well,
I.
I felt like I was watching a scene. One of my favorite movies is Brighton Beach Memoirs. I don't know
Mhm.
if ever and there was this superstition. So this Jewish family, and they could never say if somebody has cancer, they have to either whisper it or give
Yeah,
it a different name.
same thing. Yeah.
It does also exist in other cultures, but you're right. There are topics that feel like a little bit taboo, or also, it's like bad luck to mention them.
Yeah. So anyway, I think we should challenge ourselves to do that,
Yeah.
and also I'm a believer that n- uh, every reaction is a good reaction because we want engagement. Ultimately, we want dialogue with the community, and not everything we do is going to get a hurrah, hurrah. Criticism is welcome as well. So
Yeah. Well,
you
and
know.
what do you think about that, Sarah, about including maybe sometimes a little bit more controversial topics that get people thinking or get people talking?
I'm with Alex on that. We've actually talked quite a bit. There are several topics that we feel like we could explore. We're not, we don't. I want to say off the bat that we don't dismiss any subject or topic. We don't just dismiss them. We do talk about things. One of the things that I would like to see is, Dr. Mary had talked about some Arabic pieces in the paper. I'd like to see some in Surat as well. One of the things that I've heard from people in the community is that when their kids were little and they wanted to teach them, or even when they were little and their parents wanted to teach them Surat and they didn't want to learn it, but now they do. Now that they're older, they're like, why didn't you teach us this? Why didn't why didn't you keep this going? So I think that as far as the Chaldean community, we've got faith, food, family. The church is a big part of it, but the language is a big part of your identity. And I feel like that is something that we need to fight to preserve.
Thank you, Sarah. And Dr. Mary, what are your thoughts about including, maybe different angles in the future?
Well, we like everyone said, we have an open mind, open door, open window, open pages to different thoughts. We are very, I would say, very objective in what we present. Very neutral in what we present. So I think we can build on that. But just to give you a final thought, the Chaldean news, like many other uh, perhaps successful media models. Really, it's our fingerprint, the fingerprint of this generation. So, as we celebrate our successes, despite the challenges of the last 20 years, which were obviously very wonderful, I really want to see us in the next 20 years. Where are we going to be? How is that journey going to impact us and impact the community? And I think, I like always look to the future. Yes, we celebrate the past. We're proud of our past. We have been documenting the last 100 years of our presence, both in the old country, Iraq, and here in the United States. And it's an ongoing story. This is not going to stop. But I really want to see us again gathered, perhaps here, maybe without me, in the next 20 years and celebrate the future, celebrate our contributions, because we have a role and we have a responsibility to deliver that to the next generation. This is my vision. This is what I'd like to see. Thank you. And thank you, Liam, for hosting us, by the way. This was wonderful.
Thank you. I loved it. I mean, I do see you guys here and there in places, but I'm so happy that we're here all together, and hopefully next time we'll be in person. I always love your company, guys. So, and
Thanks,
then
Liam.
thank you. And then we'll go to Cal, and how can we get to that phase where we can kind of share or widen our story scope?
Well, I think we're all in agreement that we want to hear different perspectives, and we want different types of Chaldeans to contribute. One of the problems that we often run into is because of our ownership as the Chaldean Foundation or a division of the foundation, some of our stories, like it gets kind of political, right? And people interpret sometimes the Chaldean news as being like the media arm of the Chaldean Foundation, but we're really trying to publish stories that are good for the community, um, and that people want to read and that are interesting and help preserve like what's going on here and
Yeah.
what we are in reality. Um, and I'll end with something that UAM actually taught me when we talked a couple months ago about the cultural center and that history. Um, which is you told me about. I mean, basically, you appealed to the Chaldean community, and I'll do the same here to engage with our culture more. You told me about this story one time. You were in Italy, and you saw the Colosseum, and all of these Italians were walking past it as if it was nothing to see. And your point was so good. What you said is sometimes if it's so obvious, we can neglect. It's easy to neglect what we have, but we have a really strong cultural aspect in the Chaldean community. Thankfully, we're doing well in our new home in America, and it would be a huge mistake to let our culture and identity slip and to not focus on it. And I've never thought of or imagined a time where engaging with my community afterward felt like it was a waste of time or I didn't learn something. It's really like the deeper you go, the richer it gets, and you won't be disappointed.
Thank you. That is so beautiful. And, and thank you for remembering that. That was the case actually in any place I went, in Greece, the Acropolis, people would just pass it by and I'm looking and I'm like so in awe of this and that. And they're just thinking, oh, whatever. But and I think the reason I mentioned also that to you is because we do have such a rich history that dates back prior to Christianity. And that history was, there was so many attempts to destroy it because it's so important. If it wasn't so important, there wouldn't be so much attempt to destroy it. And if it wasn't such a blessing that we were able to continue it. So we have to honor this blessing. In my opinion, the way you honor something and how our ancestors honored things is by doing, not just by praying. Prayer was part of their rituals, but it was more about doing something to honor what we're trying to preserve, what we're trying to do. And I think honoring means learning about that culture, learning about that history and sharing it. And this is part of that whole process, is you guys being here, sharing your stories, sharing so much wonderful information about the Chaldean news. Thank you so much for your time. I know you guys are all super busy with deadlines constantly.
May I just add one
Sure.
last thing?
Yes,
Sorry,
do.
I see a
Yes.
note here that's a reminder. Just a shameless plug. I should have mentioned this earlier. We do have a new mobile app that is available for download at no charge. Now, I would encourage and challenge everybody watching this interview to install it on your phone, and you can engage with us that way. I should have mentioned it earlier. I apologize.
Yes, and do engage, and that's the way that it stirs up feelings for what you're trying to do. Like you starting to work with the Chaldean news, anybody contributing a story, anybody even reading the Chaldean news, that is a way to engage, and that's just that's all somebody needs to do. Really, it's not even like hard to do something very hard or very complicated or anything like that. So
and send money.
And yeah, subscribe. By the way,
Yes.
Subscribe to the Chaldean.
Of course.
Yes. Well, thank you guys again, and next time we'll do this in person. Okay, we'll do it at the new TV.
Thanks so much, Riam. Thank you,
everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a wonderful day. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Bye bye.
Take care.
Bye bye.